Welcome to Colonie TV, the governmental educational channel for the town of Colonie.
Hello, I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and welcome to Benchmark. We'll explore a variety of issues involving our justice system, our legal system, and how they intersect with the citizens of the town of Colonie. Today, we are truly fortunate to have attorney Sarah Rudgers-Tysz, Executive Director of Mediation Matters. Many of us realize in the court system today that not all conflicts can be settled through the courthouse. In fact, many conflicts can be handled even in a better fashion outside of the courthouse or in conjunction with the courthouse. Even in our Colonie Town Court, many court cases are mediated outside of the courtroom. This, of course, as we all know, provides the court an opportunity to focus on the cases that it needs to focus on while matters are being settled between people in sometimes a more peaceful way. And we're here today with Sarah to help us learn more about Mediation Matters and the services that they provide to a 6-county area and how we can all benefit by utilizing their services. And Sarah, welcome today.
Thank you very much.
Well, tell us, Counselor, about Mediation Matters. It covers a 6-county area now?
Yes, starting in April, we added Schenectady to our counties that we serve. So we serve Albany, Rensselaer, Schenectady, Saratoga, Warren, and Washington counties in total.
Well, it continues to grow, and of course, Mediation Matters has been blessed with you as Executive Director for 2 years, and as a staffer before that for a number of years as well. So you're well acquainted with not only the upstate region, but in mediation. Of course, prior to that, serving at the federal level in Mediation Matters down in Washington, D.C. And we're so happy you've come up here to assist our entire community to promote a more peaceful community in that way.
Thank you.
In the Colonie Court, of course, we're served by your office in a variety of ways, including in small claims matters. And in that way, Lou Mayon is over doing a fabulous job for the court in handling matters where people actually elect to forego a trial, but actually see if they can settle a matter through mediation. And it's great success, and it takes a lot of talent by Lou and willingness of people in order to come together to find a peaceful resolution.
That's right.
How do you get involved with other courts? Are you asked to be there, and are there other settings besides courtrooms that you work in?
We pretty much do everything. So whenever you have more than one person in the room, you have the potential for conflict. So we staff out with mediators like Lou. We have a whole host of amazing volunteer mediators that go to all of the different city courts in the 6 counties that we serve, several of the town, village, and justice courts as well. We serve clients through the family courts in all of our 6 counties. And then various administrative offices like the Department of Probation or Department of Social Services, they all act as referral sources to us as well. And really we get involved with them as either the judges or the administrators ask for our services, or sometimes we reach out if we know that there's a particularly busy court. We may reach out and say we have this service that's available to you.
Well, you and I both know that New York State is a proponent of mediation. In fact, all 62 counties enjoy some form of mediation. We're fortunate that Mediation Matters serves our county and our court. And I know from a dinner that we were all at last week, put on by Mediation Matters, hearing from the Albany County Family Court support magistrates, that they too spoke highly of the services that your firm provides in their family court. As well, which is a court like the Colonie Court, a court of the people, and where there are oftentimes disputes in a variety of levels and involving a variety of issues, where mediation can be a very successful alternative to litigation. And it's not just about the money and the time involved in litigation, but also the net result and the peace that can come from it as both parties have come to terms themselves, rather than having a court have to make a decision one way or the other, which sometimes is not always to the liking of one or both of the parties.
I couldn't agree more. I think one of the biggest, one of the foundations as to why I love mediation so much is that it reduces it. The decisions that are being made by the people who are living those decisions, who are living with the results of those decisions. And so instead of giving that to the courts to decide or handing over those decisions to somebody else that doesn't necessarily know your family or know your neighborhood or know your situation, you get to retain control over that. And you know, when I first heard about mediation, I was taking a family law class, and the professor was a juvenile advocate, and she said, you know, this is all about family law, and we're teaching you how to do that. But she brought in divorce mediators, and when I questioned, I said, well, how does this tie in with the program? She said, well, I'm a juvenile advocate, and I think the best way for parents to try and work out how they're going to parent separately is to involve mediation from the beginning, because you're going to be those kids' parents for their lifetime. And so you have to find ways to communicate with one another, and you have to find ways to make plans for each other and for those kids. And the best way to do that is find a way that you can talk to, and more importantly, listen to each other and really hear what's going on. So that's the forum that we can provide.
And Sarah, certainly the mediation process has generated great success in a variety of areas. Mm-hmm. And not only in settling civil matters or small claims matters or landlord-tenant disputes, but also certainly in parenting issues, mm-hmm. and in very emotional family court matters. Mm-hmm. And you had told me about a parenting matter where mediation really became the key element to unlocking the problems that they were facing and struggling in the confines of a courtroom, which outside of the courtroom they were able to dissolve and break down the animosities and come to a logical conclusion on their own. Tell us about a couple stories like that where that actually mediation was right on target for the issue at hand.
Well, I think you know, we're very protective of our clients, and so one of the fundamental pieces of that is confidentiality. So forgive me as I hedge pronouns a little bit so that I don't give anything away. But we had a couple of we had one parenting one that was really moving. It was a high conflict, raised voices, lots of yelling. The mediators are very, very skilled at being able to manage that kind of conversation, and if you can call it a conversation at that level. And all of a sudden, the mediator heard, let's just say mom in this case, mom just said, I'm just scared. I'm really scared. And all of the other voices were really loud, and all of the rest of the mediation was really loud, but they heard that one nugget. And the mediator teased it out and said, what can you tell me more about that? What are you scared of? And she said, I'm scared of losing my kids. I'm scared of losing time with my kids. And the other parent just stopped and said, wait, what? And the moms who originally spoke said, you know, there was talk that you were going to move out of the state, and that was going to interrupt my schedule and the time that I have, and it's precious. It's so very precious to me. And suddenly everything, the mediator said you could just feel it. Everybody relaxed. And he said, that was never my intention. I was never planning to move. I reacted because you filed for custody. And she said, well, I filed for custody because I heard you were going to move. And it just spiraled. And had they been in a courtroom, it just would have been that argument, the positions. It was, you know, I want this and I want that. And never understanding and unpackaging what that meant to them and how that, what was really important to them. And the mediator, just by asking that question and then facilitating that conversation, finally gave this family peace that they hadn't had for months prior to that.
And in conjunction with that, too, mediation has often been a valuable tool between parents and teenagers, for instance, in how the needs are of both. And oftentimes, conflict can arise, in a domestic situation just on that level. And that oftentimes mediation can be utilized successfully to settle and make more peaceful the home. And had you have any conversation or any anecdote for us in connection with how that's worked as well?
Well, my passion has always been youth and juvenile advocacy, hence my legal training in that area. And so I really think that we owe it to our kids to give them a voice, and to our family units to have a voice. And so our parent-teen cases often come from probation, departments of probation, or Department of Social Services, depending on the county. And I can remember one, it was a very touching case where there was a dad and his son, and they weren't connecting anymore. And so the son was kind of acting out in various and sundry ways. And come to find out, as we got the case referred and we started with the intake, there had been a mom was a conduit between the two of them, and the son had more of a connection with his mom. And then as time went on, and she unfortunately passed away rather young, and so dad and son were forced to try and figure out how to get along again. And they just had a conversation in mediation that was different than any other forum they did. One of the things I love talking about mediation is everybody else's life outside of these folks that we're dealing with are in chaos, and they're not getting along, and there's conflict everywhere around them. But what we can provide for them is a space and a break from that chaos, and a place where they can come and have a different kind of conversation than they're going to have with anybody else. And that's what happened with this dad and the son, so that they got to a point where they were able to say, the son was able to say, I just want to spend time with you. I just want to understand who you are. But honestly, I want you to understand who I am. And by the time they were done, they had the beginning to a new kind of relationship that they wouldn't have had if they had just stayed in that pattern in the cycle that they were in.
Now, you're representing now 6 counties here in upstate New York. And of course, in my own court, we'll refer to cases just that way, that we have 25,000 cases a year coming into the Colonie Court, covering a variety of different types. Do you look at them as cases, or how do you look at them, and how many do you manage on an annual basis, or do you do it by monthly? How do you account for what you're handling or involved with?
Right. We pretty much put them as cases. It's just an easier way of counting.
Sure.
Hundreds and hundreds, near 1,000 now. We've only been in Schenectady for a few months, so we'll see what that does to our total. Right. Not every case ends up in mediation. Some either we determine that it's not appropriate for mediation, or we hear from one person or another. One of the other principles to mediation is that it's a voluntary process, so people have to choose to want to go. And sometimes we don't have 2 volunteers. We have
right.
one person who chooses to decline. And that's wonderful, because our opportunity is that we want to educate the public about mediation, have an opportunity, and make sure that service is available. Because even in those cases where initially they say no thank you, there's oftentimes that they return after they've tried the other processes and realize, ooh, maybe that was a better idea. So they come back in. Our volunteers are an incredible group of people. They do about 90% of the direct delivery of mediations for us, so they donate thousands of hours. Coming in and sometimes driving to courts like your own, and
right.
sometimes maybe not get a case, but they're willing to be there on hand to provide that service for the clients. And I've said many, many times at all of our recognition events for our volunteers that I am honored to be raising my children in a community where there are people like this trying to bring a little bit more peace to people.
It's important, even as I emerge in recognizing the full length and breadth of what Mediation Matters can provide, that for the Colonie Court, it's just not managing a small claims matter or settling those issues, but actually Mediation Matters could contribute positively to a variety of conflicts that are presented in that courthouse,
Yes.
extending to maybe landlord-tenant matters in some ways, sometimes in other different types of civil actions as well. And we're learning today from you that Mediation Matters is also ready, willing, and able to be involved in cases that aren't even in the courthouse.
Yes.
And that actually it's a preference to see whether they could be involved before matters end up in court.
That's absolutely right. We often talk about, we get the cases when they're referred when a judge sends them over, or when probation or Department of Social Service sends them over. Oftentimes people are pretty entrenched in their positions by that point. So if we can get them even earlier, even before there's a conflict, we've had families who, we're all facing the sandwich generation, where you're trying to figure out how you're going to care for mom and dad as they're aging, and oftentimes there's multiple siblings involved. And prior to that becoming an anxious or urgent need, come on in and have a conversation with somebody. We're not going to solve the problem for you. We're going to just provide a forum for you to come together, have that conversation that you need to have with somebody there who can manage it, keep you on track, keep you focused, and not be emotionally invested in it, so that they can stand back and be neutral and give you the power to make your own decisions. So yeah, we love the court referrals because we know we're providing an additional service in another forum, but we love getting the cases even earlier on so that we can catch them before they get too serious and too entrenched.
So in fact, Mediation Matters invites contact or inquiry by citizens in the six-county area to bring a problem that they're having to Mediation Matters well before it gets into the litigation stage, which obviously is more preferable in many different ways. I tell people all the time, the last place you want to settle your matter is before a judge.
Yeah.
And I've been a judge for 14 years. And I say this each morning that I'm there, because then I make the decision. And it may not be welcomed by one party or the other party or both.
Yeah.
And many people get strident in their offense or their defense, oftentimes emotionally charged, which leaves little room for the court to be able to assist them in themselves finding resolution. Mediation Matters certainly provides a level playing field in that way for people to talk through it and try to unpack that emotion and park that somewhere off site so that we can get to the heart of the matter. I often and routinely, historically, have urged people to settle their matter, but I'm certainly here to try the case. I'm happy to do it, but I urge you to do that. So historically, I asked the parties if you'd go out in the hallway and talk a little bit more. And these two people decided to go out into the parking lot. They got into a fist fight. They were both arrested for assault.
Oh, no.
And so now they're back in front of me on Wednesday night on criminal charges.
Oh, no.
All about a small claims matter. We're fighting over what? Some money.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's more than money underneath, as we all recognize. You have noticed it in Mediation Matters with all of the volume of cases you've had. I've been practicing law for well over 30 years and served as a judge for 14. Oftentimes there's something under the money claim that is fueling. Sometimes I find in practice and in the courthouse, and while I want attorneys to be facilitators, I'm not sure I always enjoy that from them. And I think the practice of law should be underscored. Attorneys should be noted as facilitators. Sometimes I worry that attorneys forget that they're counselors at law and that they should be spending time with their clients talking about the reality of the situation and the lifelong impact of what you're about to say or what you're about to do. And oftentimes emotionally charged matters without an attorney who's providing a filter of sanity just acts as an accelerant to a very protracted experience, which then leaves society with a bad taste in their mouth about how the practice works. And of course, you and I encourage all attorneys to serve as facilitators first and to filter the emotion of their client. They shouldn't always merely just rubber stamp the emotion of their client and move it on. They should filter that first. Mediation Matters does a great job of that.
And we welcome the presence of attorneys if the client would feel more comfortable participating in mediation with attorneys. We would always allow them to have that presence. Sure. But what we always encourage of everybody who participates in mediation is that the people who are living the conflict should have the largest voice in mediation. And so if it just gives them more comfort to have their representative there, I think that's wonderful. And we have had attorneys be wonderfully effective in mediation. But in that forum, it's a different kind of thing than in front of you or in another courtroom where they're zealously advocating for their client. In this forum, in our forum, the people are given the opportunity, the people who are dealing with the conflict and living the conflict are given the opportunity to have as much power over that resolution as they can.
I know last week when we were together, you were handing out, or it was provided, a card from City University of New York, and they certainly are a big proponent of dispute resolution themselves. And on the card, they set forth some questions which only highlight the nature and extent of what you're trying to do and how you reach people. And you're asking questions like, what do you think? Or is this what you mean? Or how will this work for you? Like you said in a previous anecdote, why are you afraid? What is it that you're afraid of? Being willing to take that task and to unpack that emotion first and foremost is certainly a talent and a skill. And you said that you have a variety of very talented volunteers for which Mediation Matters is blessed. How many volunteers do you currently have affiliated with the organization?
We have roughly between 75 and 100 mediators spread out across the 6 counties. They go through an extensive amount of training, basic training, and then an apprenticeship process. We take quality assurance very, very seriously. They're our front line. If people are going to have a good experience with mediation, it's going to be because these volunteers, they're dedicated, they serve on committees at the organization. We went through a bit of a funding crunch a couple of years ago when the court system was all taxed with a lot of budget restraints, and they stepped up. They really came and stood by us. We have a board of directors that's an amazing group of people that are very dedicated. The leadership that we've been able to have over the years has been a tremendous resource for Mediation Matters. So with all of the volunteer efforts that we have supporting us, we can't fail. We're moving forward. We just started some brand new programs, working more closely with schools, working more closely with those that were formerly incarcerated, reconnecting them to their families. And a lot of these are based from connections that the volunteers have made for us and set up for us. So it's a powerful, powerful thing.
Well, good work begets good work, and you have become a magnet for so many talented people who are volunteering in connection with spreading the goodness and the peacefulness of Mediation Matters. Just last Thursday, Jackie Brilling was representing Mediation Matters in my courtroom.
That's right.
And Jackie, with an extensive resume, is retired from the Public Service Commission, not only as an administrative law judge, but also a secretary to the Public Service Commission.
Yes.
And she has gravitated immediately to Mediation Matters and came into the courthouse to make herself available on all points of contest. And I was very fortunate, and the citizens of the town of Colonie are very fortunate to be able to have that kind of volunteer service there, and the level of background and experience that would be difficult to buy by people, and there it is available. And so and all courts should recognize the length and breadth of what you can do and what you're willing to do, and also this public should recognize too the advantage of contacting Mediation Matters on a variety of disputes that they even see brewing in the home, in intra-family issues, concerns about moms and dads and how to take care of them as they grow older, and there might be different points of view. All of these are everyday problems that we are all in as we speak, and being able to have somebody of sound mind and body to kind of work through it and ask each person what their fears are. And, you know, have you said that fear is one of the greatest impediments to moving forward? Is that correct?
Yeah, you know, one of the things that the mediators are always looking for, what are the emotions going on behind the words that people are using and why they're choosing to do certain things. And fear is a huge motivator. It's for action, and it's a lot of the time that's the foundation of where things are coming from. So we try and unpackage that. We try and listen for the emotions, listen for the underlying stuff that's going on for people, and try and see if we can give that back to them. And sometimes when we can just frame it, we can just put a name to it, a word to it, or you're embarrassed, you're scared, they're feeling a sense of loss. It's a new normal that you're trying to define for yourselves. You give those things words, suddenly it's more tangible, and they have control over that outcome and what they're going to be able to do with that. And it's a very powerful process to see that transformation go for people. You can literally see the physical breath that people can take when they finally get it right. When you get it right as a mediator, you can see the dynamics change.
Sarah, we all know that not all litigation works. Certainly not all mediations end with a positive outcome. Are there certain categories that you've seen over time of why a mediation doesn't conclude a matter?
I think, you know, everybody says resolution's defined in a different way. So, you know, some people think an agreement is the best resolution, and sometimes that's not always the case. We want to bring people to a better place. We first do no harm. That, you know, we're right there with the doctors to make sure that we don't make things worse in mediation. But most of the time, I don't know that there are trends of what's a predictor for success in mediation, because what's successful to one person is not necessarily the best outcome for somebody else. So I'd say that if people who are open to having a conversation, to being creative with the ways that they can resolve their issues, those are going to be the best opportunities for success. But I don't want to narrow that down so that people think, oh, I really am passionate about this issue, I shouldn't go to mediation, because that's not true either. I think every case has the potential for a positive outcome, because every case is very different. I've always said, if you want to see the depth and breadth of our counties and our communities, come work for a mediation center, because we see it all, as I'm sure you are very familiar with in the town courts. But you know, every family, every neighborhood, every issue that we've dealt with has been slightly different. And I've seen cases that didn't necessarily come to conclusion in mediation, but then we check in with them a month later, and suddenly they're talking to each other differently. We had a judge say once at one of our volunteer dinners that he notices a difference when the clients come back to him for litigation after mediation. Even if they haven't come to an agreement, he notices a difference in how they're talking to each other. And that's that piece, that space that we're providing for people, that time, that block of time, just gives them a different way of communicating, and we hope that there's a nugget in there that maybe will plant a seed and it'll change how they're working with each other in the future.
Sarah, how can the citizens contact you or Mediation Matters in order to further explore your opportunities for them?
Well, we have two main offices. The Albany office is on Russell Road off of Central, and that number is 446-0356. And we also have a Saratoga office, and that's on Broadway, right downtown Saratoga Springs. And that number is 584-6361. Now, as we said, we serve 6 counties. So just because if you're not in Albany or Saratoga County, we have staff and satellite offices and borrowed space in all of our 6 counties. So we can get you a mediator as close to you as possible in any of the 6 counties. But those 2 phone numbers would be the best place to start to get our services. And then if you explain where you are and your types of issues, we'll get you to the right person.
Well, Sarah, I certainly, on behalf of the town court, want to thank you very much for making sure that volunteers appear on a regular basis to assist the court and its needs. And hopefully, as we move forward, people who perceive a conflict will reach out to you directly before they even get into the courthouse, which we all know involves typically much time and sometimes much money too. And maybe they would find it more rewarding if they met with Mediation Matters before they got off to the courthouse. Sarah Rudgers-Tysz, thank you very much for being with us today. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm Colonie Town Judge Peter Crummey, and thank you for joining me on Benchmark.